There was a time 5, 6, 7 years ago where there were literally thousands of quote unquote journalists. And those of us who were actually working for money, we got pretty aggravated. It turned from, the editor of Guns Magazine to, hi, I've got a blog with 18 subscribers. And it seemed like those people were the ones who would spend 3 hours clogging up the works. Well, hi there, and welcome to the Guns Podcast US. I'm your host, Brent Wheat, and I'd like to thank you for joining one of the world's biggest gun talk programs as we chat about the interesting stuff that makes up the world of shooting. Of course, I'm joined by my official co-host, Roy Huntington. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning. You always say the biggest, I always want to say the biggest baloney guys in the world. Yeah.
Maybe that's why we're successful, because we certainly don't take ourselves too serious.
No, I agree.
So, well, before we get started, we got a fun one, but quick word from our great sponsor, Tango Down.
Tango Down has been a trusted leader in firearms, parts, and accessories for more than 2 decades. Whether you're upgrading your everyday carry or finishing out your next rifle build, Tango Down has you covered. Their product line continues to grow with new releases coming in 2026. Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, Roy, it's the week we all love to hate to love, and it's the craziest. It's the Paris Fashion Show, the Indy 500, Daytona 500, Easter, Christmas, all wrapped into one. Next week at this time, I'll be at SHOT Show, and we're gonna talk about that. And the reason we're going to talk about it, it's been brought up many times, but it occurred to me today as I'm getting ready. The week before SHOT is just ugly, trying to get your life in order so you can go and go to this giant trade show, is the fact that it is one of the few trade shows in the world that folks on the consumer side really at least know about it, if not, have a lot of information. And, as I was telling you, Roy, I doubt if folks know where the plumbing show is or the HVAC show, and there's nothing against that. It's just those are so much industry only, industry focused, that the average John and Jenny citizen, it doesn't matter to them. But SHOT Show matters to most shooters, and you hear us in the media talk about it all the time. So we're going to talk about that as we get ready to go, and kind of this idea of why it is so important, or even the phenomenon of it being known throughout the shooting community. So, Roy, you've been to 150 of them or something?
I think so. Yeah.
I was going to say, and you don't go anymore after 30 or 40 of them, probably. You're kind of over it.
My first one was 1987. And
okay.
I think the interesting thing about it, though, is that, like, when I went then, I can't remember for sure, but I think it was like 500 exhibitors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now it's 1,500 or more, 1,800.
I think.
Yeah. And in those days, the 4 days of the SHOT Show, you could actually walk around it, see it, take your time, talk to people, meet and greet and stuff like that. And yeah, now it's just this like train wreck of a show. I mean, it's so overwhelming,
It is. And just a few numbers so you get a sense of it. It's the 8th largest trade show in the United States. It's the largest shooting focused show in the world. Last time I walked it with a pedometer, which was before I became the editor at Guns Magazine, it was like 14 miles to walk all the rows. And since I became editor of Guns Magazine 8 years ago now, I don't even walk it. Even though my mileage didn't go down, because when you're part of the industry, That's the part you don't like about SHOT Show is you're just running from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and then you see everybody and you stop and I'm late, and it just if you're doing SHOT Show right, literally you leave your hotel at 7 a.m. and you probably get back 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and you basically iron your shirt for tomorrow and get up and do it again. And it's exhausting after 4 days, but it is a ginormous show. Last several years, it's taken place in Vegas. I didn't look up how many exhibitors, but there's a whole big bunch. And truly, pretty much everybody that's connected with the shooting, hunting, outdoor trade show, that's what it stands for. Anybody connected with those industries is there. And, but I'm still really fascinated by this phenomenon that the average shooter if you say SHOT Show, they can at least tell you kind of what it is. Why do you think it is so important to the shooting community? But kind of put that in perspective.
Well, I think shooters are such passionate people, and also I think the fact that people in the shooting industry talk about the SHOT Show a lot. I mean, people in the car business really, they don't like do the podcast and come on and talk about SEMA all the time. I mean, it does occur, but, plumbers don't talk about the plumbing show. And, but I think, we need to dispel a few myths and rumors. The SHOT Show is not a gun show.
Right.
So it's not a consumer show. As a matter of fact, the exhibitors are not allowed to sell anything at the SHOT Show. And if you sell something at the SHOT Show, I mean, they're very interesting. They come over, they unceremoniously close your booth down and put a curtain around it. With a sign that says closed because they were selling.
Stupid.
I mean, it's remarkable. So, in a nutshell, it's a place where manufacturers, so Smith & Wesson and Mossberg and Ruger and, all these companies come and they show their wares. They often introduce new products. And the people who look at them are people like us in the media, right? Then there are dealers, and that's the huge thing. The SHOT Show is where dealers go. What dealers then can do is see all the new products that are coming up. And then what they do is that they go to their distributors who are there, RSR and, and other ones, Xanders. And then they buy their products. And the smart dealers come there with a pocket full of cash, and they will buy basically what they're going to be selling for the next year. Because they can get, long-term pricing and show specials and, and all that kind of stuff. So, that's what it's all about. And then, as you said, guys like us in the media, we tend to go from marketing meeting to marketing meeting to marketing meeting. And what that means is that, Sally Smith is the marketing manager for a company. And so they want to meet with us to show us what they're doing and to try to solicit some editorial or videos or whatever it is. And so we get the information, maybe arrange for sample products to come and stuff like that. So that's what we're doing. So, dealers tend to meet with their distributors because you'll see them in the big RSR booth. You've seen them, and there's all these distributor people there, and they have all these distributor salespeople there. They're all these little desks, and what they're doing is they're selling stuff for all year. Then the manufacturers will tend to meet with their factory reps. And what a factory rep is an independent group of people who showcase a manufacturer's property to dealers and distributors, because most dealers don't have the wherewithal to put people on the road to do that. And so the rep groups man the booths and they talk to the manufacturers and they fly the flag, and so it's a real symbiotic kind of a thing. The only person who isn't there are the consumers. And they used to have kind of loose rules, and if you were smart, you could get your buddy, the dealer over here, to get you a ticket to get in. But what happened was, though, they would clog up everywhere. You get all these looky-loos running around, trying to get every free sticker and every free pin and, whatever is around. And it would interfere with the ability of the people who were there to do business, And so basically people thought it was the NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, who put on the SHOT Show, that they were the ones that cracked down on that. But it really wasn't. It was the exhibitors, distributors, dealers. They said, you got to get rid of these people because they're interfering with our ability to do business. So in that sense, it's a pretty kind of clean show,
Yeah. Well, and we had a similar phenomenon in the media side when, especially YouTubers and podcasters and bloggers became a thing. Many of those folks qualified under looser rules for media passes. And the thing is, the buyers, distributors, they have to pay for their passes, and the media get free passes. So there was a time 5, 6, 7 years ago where there were literally thousands of quote unquote journalists. And those of us who were actually working for money, we get the same thing. We got pretty aggravated that there's an event the day before called Industry Day where you actually go out the range and shoot all this stuff. And it turned from, the editor of Guns Magazine or Roy Huntington, the publisher of FMG Shooting Guns, to, hi, I've got a blog with 18 subscribers. And it seemed like those people were the ones who would spend 3 hours clogging up the works. And so there's been pretty much a kind of a crackdown on all that, to the point where I've got a good friend who shall remain nameless that is a well-known personality in industry, but he doesn't necessarily meet the criteria for range day. And he has a heck of a time getting in. So that's been good. And that's been some of the crackdown, but it was starting to collapse under its own weight. And I think things have kind of stabilized now. Wouldn't you say, Roy?
Oh, I agree. I mean, when I first was going to the SHOT Show, 87, 88, 90, there might have been 300, maybe 350 actual journalists there. Mm-hmm. Because, there really wasn't podcasting. There was very little video, and that video was TV. Right. So there may have been like a hunting outdoor show or something like that, but it was primarily print media. And so, these were a pretty focused group. And so, if you had a new product launch at Remington, you usually, or a lot of times it would be in their booth, for instance, in the morning before the show opened. And so, I would look around and there might be 20, 25 people there. And these are all the names in gun. You would, Rick Jamerson and all the guys from Gary James, all the gun writer people you would know from those days. They were all there. And it was really easy to manage for the manufacturers. And they knew that, okay, here we got Guns and Ammo covered. We got Guns Magazine covered. We got American Handgunner covered. They knew what was going to happen. Products were going to get in magazines. They were going to sell their products. It was accountable, and it was trackable, and you were working with friends. I remember I was having lunch one time with Ken Jorgensen, who at the time was the media liaison for Ruger. And this was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And we were talking about how on earth, if you're a media manager, how do you manage the number of, media people who try to contact you now? Because if a manufacturer says, hey, we're announcing we have this new gun, contact us and we'll send a sample out to you. Well, in the old days, that was maybe 8 samples or 10 samples would go out to writers and magazines. Well, Ken Jorgensen was funny, in between bites, he said, for instance, he used to do the same thing at Smith & Wesson. And so he said, in the 80s at Smith & Wesson, his what do you call the old phone Rolodex,
Yeah.
His Rolodex, was maybe 150 writers, mm-hmm. And so he said, when I announced a new product, I would send out maybe 12 guns, 15 guns. He said, and I knew I was going to get coverage now based on that. And he told me at the time that I talked to him, which was 10 or 12 years ago, he said that his media reference, that he had was almost 3,000 contacts.
Wow.
And he said, of course, the number of those that are really legitimate, he said it wasn't a lot smaller than it was before. He said the core of this is 200 or 300, but he said the problem is now when they announce a new product that he would get hundreds of requests. Say, send me a gun, I'll do you a video that'll get seen by 34 people.
Yeah.
He said you just have to make value judgments based on that. So, I mean, can I say one more thing? I remember Russ Thurman and I were at the NRA show, which is like a mini-me version of the SHOT Show, but it's a consumer show, which means that Sam and Susie Homemaker can go there and see basically the same stuff that we see at the SHOT Show. And you can also buy it there. But I remember we were there, this was 18 years ago, 15, 18 years ago. It was Russ Thurman and me. Somebody else was there. And we were in the media room. And you remember at the SHOT Show, they have a media room where you could go and hang out and have a cup of coffee and hold meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it used to be very civilized. And, there might be 40 people in it at any one time, right?
Yeah.
And you'd look around, everybody. And that was really good. So Russ and I were in the media room at the NRA show, and everyone at the time, everyone has suits on, and everyone's, got their briefcases and they're doing business, right? And so we look up and these guys come in and they're like a T-shirt with spilled spaghetti on it and short floppy pants, and flip-flops and, nose piercing. And they've got, couple of biggish video cameras. And I remember vividly, they had remember those Motorola microphone things that you used to be able to buy, like if you were a geek, right? And so you could constantly be talking to whoever was right over there, at another table. And they had that. And Russ and I overheard they were complaining that no one would talk to them. That they were saying, man, that's not cool because remember we went into Ruger and nobody really wanted to talk to us about anything. And so I remember we let them go on for a while, and then Russ was the one. He went over. He says, "Guys, can I offer you some suggestions? If you act and dress like you're here to do business, you will probably have people want to do business with you. But if you come in here looking like you just got back from the swap meet, then people are going to look at that, and that's going to tell you something." But now, having said that, you and I both know that now it's like the opposite almost.
Yeah.
It's just the bizarre people you see at the SHOT Show, and everybody with an iPhone is now a video star.
Everyone's a content creator.
Content creator.
Yeah. I saw somebody on Facebook today that from my past, professionally speaking, what I did before, and he's from my past. That's what he lists his career as, content creator.
Well, I will say, though, that there's been a dramatic change in the marketing side of business at the SHOT Show. I mean, I remember 10, 12 years ago, the younger marketing managers were all about, video and these content influencers, that's the future of our industry,
Yeah.
And I remember they started to ignore the more traditional journalists and content creators, right?
Yeah.
And people who had legs in the industry and who knew people and who understood how business worked and all that. And so, but what we're seeing now, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, is a real segue from that back to longer term personal relationships with people who have actual, the ability to actually get the word out. Now, granted, that could be a podcast like this one. It could be a good YouTube channel, but these are people who have proven themselves that they can deliver what they promise. Hey, if you send me a gun, I'm going to get you views. And so, they've really circled the wagon and narrowed the focus of who they deal with.
Well, I've talked to marketing directors about this, and I think they had to, because it's exactly what you said. Everybody and their dog that had a camera was suddenly a content creator, and even some folks with some fairly substantial followings, they got burned by them. They have a certain expectation. They never tie it. A manufacturer almost never ties it to, I want positive coverage of my product. They say, send it out if you've got legitimate, commentary about it, that's fine. But what a lot of them found was that, and especially gaming YouTube algorithms, the more you complain and talk trash, the more it tended to reward you. And they learned real quick that, a guy with a substantial following, but you send out a $2,000 rifle and all he does is talk trash about it. What good does that do the manufacturer? So, I mean, they certainly have the right to talk trash, but the manufacturer also has the right not to send them a free rifle. So I think, like you said, there's a certain expectation now of, give my product a fair review. And if you find some blemishes, that's fine. But the guys that kind of made their living early on in YouTube of waving their arms and talking smack and trashing everything, they've kind of gone by the wayside. And the other factor too is the professionalism. The guys, it's funny. I think what a lot of my friends don't understand, I know most of the guys in the legacy media, I know a lot of guys in the YouTube space, and even the ones that you think are just real disorganized and mellow and easygoing, there's a marketing machine behind all that. And it's very deliberate. So, especially the big YouTube channels, they have teams. They have a marketing director. They have a director of photography. I mean, most of them do. And it's very much still, it's the new legacy media. And the ones that are successful are the ones that handle that like a business. So anyway,
I was going to say, that's the beauty of the SHOT Show, is that it lets manufacturers meet with these people in person. And then, you and I both know when you shake somebody's hand and talk to him for 5 minutes, well, you now know who you're dealing with,
And I'm never sending that guy a product ever
again. So so that's what the SHOT Show is. There's a big law enforcement section, which exploded in interest when they introduced that. A lot of people may not remember that in the early days of SHOT Show, I mean, up until about 20 years ago, you were not allowed to show an AR-15 style rifle. I mean, there was nobody, not allowed.
Imagine.
Yeah. There was no anything like that. Even surplus guns that were brought in, they looked at with a squinty eye. But once they did an experiment, they did some tactical stuff, and then that, of course, has exploded out. It's probably half the SHOT Show now.
Easily.
So easily. Yeah. So things change. So no, you can't go to the SHOT Show.
Yeah. And it's funny, guys like Roy that have been there, done that. A lot of them are opting out. And this, I'm pushing right around 25 years myself. And, this year unfortunately, most folks know, Guns Magazine print edition is gone, and I'm no longer officially the editor of the Guns Magazine print edition. So I'm a freelancer. And I've got the podcast, and I still write for gunsmagazine.com. So I'm just going, Roy. I'm not scheduling very many meetings. I'm just going to walk around and see all of our friends and kind of rekindle those networks and see where it takes us. But I think that comes up to the problem I was going to ask you, though. We have this problem every year, and every media outlet, from the smallest YouTube channel to the biggest publications, have this same problem. What do we do at SHOT Show? And we've tried it all. We've tried jumping in with both feet and videos every 15 seconds and guests and interviews and product reviews to, more commentary to, I don't know, because typically what happens, and it's not just us, because I've talked to all of our cohorts in the media, is there are so many folks covering so much that they just vomit out video and writing and blogs. And what that does, it dilutes the audience. So even folks that normally have big audiences, their coverage or their audience numbers go down at SHOT Show because there's only so many new product videos you can watch as a YouTube short or, reviews on the website. So I'm not exactly sure what the right answer is. Like I said, we had the big SHOT Show booth the last several years for the podcast, and this year we do not have it. I didn't want to commit to that with things being in flux as they have over the last year. My hope is we'll do it next year and have a full studio and come up with a brilliant plan and do all kinds of stuff. But my problem is, I don't know what to do this year. I'm taking all my gear, got all my equipment, got my laptop. I'm not sure what I want to do. So, Roy, I'm going to put that to you in just a second, but I'm going to point out that please, in the comments or reach out, editor@gunspodcast.us. I want to hear what folks want, because we've even done reader surveys, and the problem on our side is you do good work and it's labor intensive, and then 42 people watch it. So I don't know if there is a secret sauce. Maybe the audience is just too diluted with too many folks doing it. But Roy, from your seat in Missouri, a couple thousand miles away from the SHOT Show in Las Vegas, what do you think really impacts the folks in the shooting public?
I think unless you're like a Joe Rogan and have 20 million viewers, and that's kind of appeals to the mass market, right? I think where we have the best success, and I think where smart people have the best success, and if you see podcasts and YouTube channels, they usually have a core group of fans, of people who have come to know them, come to respect them, listen and believe what they say and do. And I think those are the people you have to have your audience for. I think just shotgunning stuff out there, if I was at the SHOT Show and I covered, the new shoelace manufacturer and, the new camo paint manufacturer and stuff, I think my viewers would just say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But if I did like 10 short videos of the 10 coolest things I saw at SHOT Show, and they would be guns, accessories. There might be a person I met, but they were things that were tailored to the market of the people who watch what we do and who read what we do. And I think those are the people who are most successful. I really do. I mean, every time that I do a video that I know will appeal to the people who watch what we do, it invariably does well.
Yeah.
And, and if I do one from out here, in the left field somewhere, it's almost funny because you get comments that say like, what was that all about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, we're always pushing the envelope and trying to expand and see, what the audience really likes. And you're absolutely right. We've got a great core group that is growing, and it's always interesting to hear their input. So I will say the only thing that I've got in mind is I've always wanted, with all this new technology we've got, I want to focus on stories because everybody, like I said, anybody's connected with the shooting industry is there. And what I'm considering doing, we have a nice hotel room. It's a little suite and it's a nice environment. I'm thinking about, instead of doing all this stuff from the show floor, trying to chase everything, just sit down with folks, because we've done that with some of our writers, our former writers, Frank Jardam and Will Dabbs and Alan Garbers and a bunch of folks like that. And I think that's what our audience likes. They like to hear stories. And it's hard for me to compete at my age and my viewpoint with the younger folks that are breathless about that new grip screw that came out with 32 lines checkering instead of 15. There's so much of that going on. It's hard for me to really get too excited about it.
Well, and because they're all chasing each other.
Yeah.
In other words, who has the most things? Who saw the coolest thing? Who frantic, groom. I think as long as we always revert back to what do we know? What do we do best? We know who our reader base is, our viewer base is. Well, then let's cater to that market.
Yep. Exactly.
And I think people are comfortable that way when they click and they go on to, our podcasts, they kind of know and trust what they're going to get.
Yep.
So
that's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
So, Roy, I got to get packing. So we're going to wrap this bad boy up. Like I said, leave us a comment. Roy checks those things every day. And to the guy that didn't like the music, I checked your page out. Really? Come on. It's a kid. Anyway. No, I've had multiple questions about the music, and so far 99% have liked it, except that one guy. So anyway, Roy checks those comments a lot, and he's liable to come back at you if you're an idiot. So be careful there, or you can reach us at editor@gunspodcast.us. Of course, before we go, don't forget our great sponsor, Tango Down.
Visit tangodown.com to explore the full lineup and sign up for email updates so you don't miss what's next. Tango Down, combat gear without peer.
Well, thanks for joining us here on another great episode of the Guns Podcast US. As I said, I'll be packing right now. Not sure what you're going to see in this space next week, but I'm sure it'll be fun and interesting. So, Roy, any final parting words before we do that big sign-off?
I'm just so glad I'm not going, you know.
I knew that. I knew it.
All right. Good luck.
But we have talked. One of these days, I'm going to get you out there. We're going to do a meet and greet with the fans, and it'll rekindle your spirit, and then folks will know hell has frozen over. The Zamboni machine is operating.
It's true.
So, anyway, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate that you folks watch us, because we've got a great audience. It's growing, and we really appreciate that you take time out of your day to listen or view what we're talking about. So, on behalf of Roy Huntington, I am Brent Wheat, the host of Guns Podcast US, reminding you yet again, now get out there and get shooting.